Hello, everyone. This is Jennifer Shryak. These are the RAIN sessions where I interview wonderful, real people about how they found their purpose. Sometimes it's through some wonderful, bright vision. Sometimes it's through a big challenge. And we're going to find out today from Beth Wonson how she found her purpose. Beth, hello. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me today. I love the opportunity to meet you in person, finally, virtually. And to share my story in the event that somebody else is on the cusp of a breakthrough and there's something they can take away. So thank you.
You so much. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to dive right into these questions. What kind of work did you do before you felt called to what you're doing now?
Well, I worked in education. I consider myself a recovering school administrator. But also at the same time, I came from a family of entrepreneurs and business people. So I went into education predominantly because I'm passionate about learning. I'm passionate about growth and development. And but at the same time, I was yearning for the entrepreneurial things that I had seen in my siblings and my parents. And so while I was in that career in public education, I also became very discouraged by legislation, by the time that I had to spend in juvenile court with kids who I just perceived weren't necessarily uneducable or defiant. They just were bored and wanting more from their learning experience, and we weren't meeting their needs in the appropriate way. So that was my career prior to the things that I do now.
Wow. I didn't know some of these details, so it's really juicy for me to learn. Was the work fulfilling, and did you excel at it, Beth?
I would say I did not excel at it because I was frequently bucking the system and bucking and it was a pretty short-lived career for me because there were things I just couldn't abide by in terms of policies, procedures, legislation, the tension between the budget and doing what's right for kids, the teachers union, which I found challenging at times, but I totally understand the value and purpose and roots of it. So I would say that while I learned a great deal, and I still have students that contact me because of the impact I had on them, I would say that in terms of what the system needed and wanted, no, I did not excel.
Wow, very interesting. Okay, next question. I'm going to ask, what do you do now? And then I want to come around to what created the transition. So what is it that you do now, Beth?
So what I do now is I have a company, Beth Wonson and Company, where it's incorporated, S Corp. And what we do is we work with organizations and leaders on culture shift through understanding how we get triggered emotionally and how, when that rises to the surface, it impacts our ability to communicate, collaborate, connect, problem solve, and innovate and achieve the goals. And so the focus is predominantly on engagement and connection, social and emotional development, and understanding who I am and how I show up in the world. It's a very unique and organic approach that is actually helping organizations shift how they get the work done and how they utilize human resources for the good of the whole. It's my passion, and it's an interesting story how I got there, and I'm super eager to share that with you.
Wonderful. So it sounds like you're building conscious culture and more conscious leadership.
I would say that that's definitely a byproduct of it. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Wonderful. I'm sure we'll hear more. I hope we'll hear more as we go through these other questions. So the next one is, what occurred to make you change course?
So a couple of things occurred. When I left the public education, I had 2 little kids and I needed a job. And so I went to a large consulting and organizational development organization located outside of Boston. And their methodology that they used, the principal that I worked under, I was the assistant principal, said to me, "You've got to connect with this organization. You are such a fit for them. It's unbelievable." And so I applied, and all they had available, and I didn't know too much about them, all they had available was a very entry-level position, but I took it because I needed benefits, I needed a job, I needed to pay the mortgage, all those things, keep the lights on. And so I took the position, and within a few years, I just moved up through the ranks and spent all of my time doing implementation consulting with new client systems that came over the transom. I also was very involved in the development of a program at that time. Exclusion, expulsion, timeout, 4-point restraints were very prevalent in working with adjudicated and at-risk youth. And there were some deaths, particularly in the Pennsylvania area, for youth in treatment programs who have been put in 4-point restraints. And so we had a big campus down in Georgia that actually had a methodology for working with kids all the way from diversion up to independent living for juvenile sex offenders. And we completely used a strength-based approach, experiential education approach, full value, depending on social emotional learning and development, self-efficacy, and did no 4-point restraint, seclusion, or timeout, and had great results. And so I was part of the team that took that methodology to replicate it, to bring it out into the world. So I spent a lot of time traveling the country in juvenile prisons, all of these places, teaching the adults how to shift their behavior and their affect and their attitude so that they were no longer getting triggered by youth and then in turn triggering youth. And so that was sort of the stepping stone. I did that work for 13 years. And then I got recruited to go to a Native American organization that had gotten a $3 million grant to take their methodology for Native kids, suicide prevention, substance abuse prevention, teen pregnancy prevention, that had been wildly successful, and the government and this private foundation were funding them to replicate that and move it out. So I got brought in to be to develop the Native American leadership to run the organization and to work with tribal leadership across the United States to get ready to implement the program. So for 3 years under that grant, I did that work. When I left there, I just wrote a blog and podcast about this. It's coming out in a couple weeks. When I left there, I showed up to teach, and I left changed. My methodology, my belief around leadership development. When I moved up in the prior company, I got promoted because of my quote unquote technical skill and ability, because of my success. And so I kept getting promoted to lead teams, but I had no training around who I am, how I show up, how to be able to lead in a really nuanced way. The humans, I could lead the work, and we were wildly successful. But I was sarcastic. When I think back on it, I was manipulative, I was bullying. I mean, people loved working for me because we got great results and I was really direct. I also wasn't kind, and I wasn't kind to others, and I wasn't kind to myself. And I ended up getting really sick. I got a staph infection, I got shingles, and I was in seclusion for like 8 weeks. They couldn't get any of it under control. And it was during that time that I was thinking, there's got to be a different way. I was traveling, I was on the road, I was in hotel rooms, feeling lonely and isolated. I was drinking too much alcohol and gaining too much weight. And so it was like a, come to terms with myself transition, and working with understanding how Native American culture is a different whole world. That shifted. When that job ended, I didn't know what I was going to do. I really didn't know, but I knew that my entrepreneurial spirit was knocking on the door. I knew I had something to offer the world, and I hadn't seen this before. anywhere. And so one night I sent out 13 emails and said, I have consulting time available. I have this period of time to offer support. And if you have anything that you think I could do to support your organization, let me know. Then I went to bed. It was a Sunday night. And I thought, who does that? I mean, that is so arrogant, right? So I started questioning myself. Nobody's going to want me. Why did I put myself out there? In the morning, I had 9 responses saying, we'll buy all the time you have. Now, the other piece of this is that I had been in a long-term relationship. My partner was frustrated with my work schedule, and I get that, and encouraged me to not get a similar job when I left NIYLP, the Native American organization. So I had taken a temporary interim nonprofit director job, which was not fulfilling me in any way. And when I made that change and I was home more, it became obvious that our relationship had been operating on fumes for a really long time. And so she chose to leave, and very abruptly. And all of a sudden I realized, in my devastation and my inability to even remember like what exit to get off of to go to work, because my whole world was turned upside down, I also realized that I now had space to redesign the life that I wanted. So I bought a house, and then I quit the interim job, which was my sole source of income, with one contract for $750 and 3 months worth of mortgage money in the bank. And so now I had to begin, because I knew if I couldn't buy a house after I quit, because I wouldn't have what the bank needed from me. So that began my journey of really manifesting what I believe that I can do, dealing with my own triggers that made me wake up in the night in a total panic mode going, oh my God, who are you? What have you done? And really understanding the power of living in what is the truth right now, which is what I teach, and what Beth Wonson and company teaches in all of our workshops, is getting to what's the truth right now. What are the facts versus what are the stories we create, and what are the assumptions we make, and what's the past experiences that we bring into decision making, conflict, negotiation, innovation, problem solving, that ultimately holds us back from getting to the outcome that we can't even imagine could be possible. I couldn't even imagine that I would have the revenue, the income, the clients, the team that I have, that I'd be incorporated, that I would have a program that I own the trademarks to, that I developed, that people like the federal government are calling me to implement. I couldn't have imagined that in that time period. So I had to stay with the facts, because what I pictured for myself was tiny. What the universe, going all woo-woo, right? But true, what the universe knew was capable of me was massive. What other people could see in me was massive. What I could see was this big. So I had to get out of trying to identify the outcome. Long story.
I love it.
Communicate it, but it was an unbelievable journey for me, and magical. Not even magical, just the way the world operates.
I think that I used to kind of believe that your calling came to you when you were pretty young, in a flash, and you were going to be an astronaut. And what I'm learning through my own journey, which also includes some illness and some big time just kind of smackdown to this moment. And I wouldn't have done that on my own without that kind of support that held me in place. And what I'm hearing from you is that this calling to the truth of the moment, and to sharing that, helping other people identify the truth of their moment, came to you in this series that kind of began with just a good job to get benefits.
Yeah.
And I think when we start to talk about calling, often the job seems like a dirty word, like you can only do your purpose work, but sometimes a good job that pays the bills leads into the purpose work.
Yes.
That you're doing now.
100%. I know that I would not be here if I had not worked at Project Adventure. Project Adventure introduced me to strength-based programming. They introduced me to the concepts of self-efficacy. Project Adventure believed in me and allowed me to be entrepreneurial to the point where my team and I were selling $10 million a year in really, really, really effective programs for schools, treatment agencies, corporations, and government agencies.
Wow.
I cut my teeth in there. I learned grant writing. I learned how to work on a team. I learned about myself so deeply in that highly dysfunctional job that those 13 years are invaluable to me. And then my experience at NIYLP, invaluable. I mean, it would take us 15 hours for me to communicate all the learnings I got. But then the piece for me about it is that it was incremental and slow for me to understand, and really Navigating Challenging Dialogue is the name of my trademarked program, my copyrighted program that has a train the trainer component. It has a skills development component, it has a consulting component for organizations for culture shift. And people say to me all the time, particularly people in the coaching world, say to me, Beth, why do you work in corporations? Corporations are poison. Why do you work there? Why are you willing to go work for the federal government? And I say, because that's where humans are. And I've been doing this since 2011, and I can't tell you how many times someone will email me, call me, meet me at a speaking engagement after the fact. I haven't been in their organization for a year, 2 years, and they say to me, you know what? When you came, what I heard, I went home and tried that with my teenager. I went home and used that methodology with my partner. I used it to communicate to my mother-in-law that we weren't going to be coming to her house for Thanksgiving. And it completely shifted the conflict to an entirely different place. That's the bonus, because when employees are not so stressed about conflict outside of their lives, they're able to be more present. They're able to achieve the goals in the organization. The conflict they bring from outside, we have this myth, right? Which is leave your stuff at the door. Well, you know what? People don't leave it at the door. They suppress it, and then it comes out sideways in a brainstorming meeting. It comes out sideways in a spontaneous communication in the hall. And then you have all this entanglement. People get disconnected, or they get resentful and angry, or they refuse to work with someone, or they develop bias against a certain person. And it's all because of what we're suppressing.
Right.
What we're not dealing with. It's never, when companies call me, they say, we're having a morale problem, we're having a drama problem, we're having this. I know what they're telling me is the problem. We're not hitting goals. People aren't accountable. That's never what's going on. That's the symptom. That's a symptom. My job is to kind of secretly, a little bit on the down low, get to the underneath and the nuance, which is I can only manage myself. I can't hold anyone accountable. I can't make anyone do anything. I can manage myself, and in that I create space for others to be the best that they can be.
Wonderful. Your program sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about the program itself as well. You've talked about some of the things that led to this shift and some of the loss and recognition. Is there anything else that you had to let go of to realize this program and this work that you were called to do?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I had to let go of. The biggest thing was comparing myself to every other person who I perceived to be doing better than me, happier than me, more successful than me, onto something that I may not be onto. I also had to allow myself to let go of, there's a lot of people out there, and I had to go through a really rough experience. Luckily, I could afford it, and I could take the hit because the learning was worth it. but it tapped into my greed and my ego, and someone who's a fast talking salesperson hooked me into one of those, I can have you making 100,000 a year in 6 months if you follow my system. And she was an incredibly good salesperson. And I bought into it to the tune of $15,000. And the reason why I tell this story is because I think it's important for people to understand that the secret is to get on your figure out your authentic idea, and it takes time, and you got to work it, and you got to commit to it, and you've got to put blinders on to what everyone else is doing, and you've got to go deep into your authentic knowledge, your authentic thought, your authentic self-leadership. And also do your research, your brain-based research, how things work, best practice, all of that. But you got to do the hard work. There's nobody out there that can give it to you. My instinct, listening to my body and my intuition and everything, told me, Beth, there's no shortcuts to this. No one's going to pave the way. But I had the money. I bought into the program. Luckily, it did not set me back. There was one person who put a second mortgage on her house and almost lost her house. There was another person who tapped into their retirement account to pay for it. Great people. I met some great people in this program. Unfortunately, what I learned after the fact, when I was brave enough to say, I signed your contract, here's all your money, but I'm done. Don't ever contact me again. What I found out after was that she had had 3 bankruptcies and changed her company name 3 times, and that all of her testimonials were made up and not true. And that everybody in the program, and she bumped the price to $25,000 right after I joined in. And so there were people paying at the $25,000 level. Nobody had achieved the level of success that she was saying. This was several years ago for me now. It's probably 8 years ago. But if I could tell people one thing, it's get the idea, the thought, the belief that resonates with you, the thing that you can do better than, you believe you can do it better than anybody else in the world. And when you get that thought, step to the right of it and step to the left of it and look at what the opportunities are. So when I was developing Navigating Challenging Dialogue, I knew Crucial Conversations, all these programs were out there. Mine is different because I went to the left and I went to the right to look at it from that perspective and identify what's my difference on this, which is self-awareness, sense of self, self-accountability, self-leadership. And that's made all the difference for me. So I see people struggling saying, oh, what's my niche? What's my niche? You know what? You find your niche by traveling down the road.
And what I'm hearing is by working jobs along the way and gaining skills along the way.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Everything's a learning experience.
I agree.
Yep.
Beth, how do you define success, and where are you in relation to your definition?
As I said, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. I can frequently hear my dad's voice. He's passed away now, but he taught me almost everything I know about business. And I can always hear his voice saying, you've got to have the push. You got to work a little harder than the next guy. And competition is good for your business because it keeps you getting better. The challenge for me is that working harder than the next guy and having the push are two muscles that I have really developed. So I need to, my work is to work hard and rest hard and not feel guilty when I'm in resting mode. Success for me is when somebody contacts me, like a woman the other day who said, I I know you don't remember me, but when I took your workshop, the scenario we worked on for me, because I do a lot of spot coaching and scenarios within the workshop in the skills training. And she said the scenario we worked on was that I was afraid to ask for a promotion. And she said, I just want to let you know that after you help me reframe that, I asked for it, and next week I start my new job. That's success. The little tiny shifts that are happening in the world, this is mission work. This is the ability for the work to be better. Yes, I want enough money to live on. The ultimate success for me would be for me to be able to be a philanthropist. And I do that somewhat by offering scholarships in my program for nonprofits, because I am so committed to nonprofit work. But if I could give money to startup entrepreneurs, if I could give grants to organizations that I know are doing, the work that needs to be done in our society, and having time with my children and my partner and being in a place of, love and full presence with them, that's it for me. That's what I need and want. And creating revenue for other people. So now I have 4 consultants working with me. I have somebody who we're in the process of negotiating her coming on as a partner in the organization. So, generating livelihood and a lifestyle for others, those are the things that are super important to me, and how I measure success.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think that for some folks, there's a belief that if we're doing mission work, we're not getting paid.
Oh, yeah. That makes me crazy.
And that's part of the reason I'm including this question, is because it's so motivating to see folks who have been through this sort of personal transformation and who might even support others in their own personal transformation and kind of mission work, and that there can be real money attached to that. And not just for one person, but for everyone who comes into contact with you.
Yes.
What now wants to come through you and your work?
It's expansion of navigating challenging dialogue. It's a movement for this to become, I get emotional when I even talk about it, for this to become an influence throughout our culture, countrywide, continent-wide, worldwide, it doesn't matter to me. But we're in a time right now where people are really triggered and fearful. All people. We get bombarded. It used to be that the saber-toothed tiger eating your baby was what put you into fight or flight. Now we've evolved to a place where we know how to protect ourselves most of the time from saber-toothed tiger. It's threats to our ego, threats to our livelihood, threats to our belief system, threats to our value system, threats to our authenticity, threats to our freedom for discourse and conversation and dialogue. All of those things are the things that trigger us. And not only are they happening in the world, but they happen in the workplace as well. And so we are, the research says that the same chemistry that happens and puts you in fight or flight from a real threatening scenario, the same chemistry can happen when you watch Special Victims SUV, or when you watch the news, or when you even tell yourself a story about what might happen to you. Oh my gosh, my boss invited my colleague into a closed door meeting. I didn't get invited. What if they're talking about me? What if I'm getting fired? What if whatever? That can put you into fight or flight, which means you either shut down or you attack. It happens to all of us all the time on a regular basis. So my goal, my mission, my purpose is to help people to not only understand that, but to understand through the six-step process that I use, how to recognize it and then stop it. Because the reason it happens, it's so simple. It happens because you're human. That's it. Not because you're bad, because you're a human being. So that's what's next for me. What's next for me is moving this out. Mm-hmm. Getting everybody to understand that this is a choice. to show up in the world differently. One of the people in my training said, navigating challenging dialogue is like getting an inoculation. Once you experience it, you are never the same again. Whether you want to use it or not, you view everything through a different lens. That was so exciting for me to hear, because that's what it's about, a choice to show up differently.
Beautiful. You may have already answered this last question, Beth, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case there's something you want to add. What legacy would you like to leave?
That I had a piece. I had a piece. I had a role. I had an idea that I brought to life so that others could have less drama, less chaos, less conflict, and more authentic connection. That's it. That's it. So if one or two people sometime long down the road from now say, you know, oh, I heard Beth speak. Oh, I read Beth's blog. I listened to Beth's podcast. Beth came to our company. And I got this little tiny thing that I shifted, and it made a difference in a relationship, a communication, an opportunity. That's it for me. That's all I want. I want to be part of the shift where our humanity is kinder to ourselves and to others.
That is beautiful. And I want to thank you for sharing your story, because not only will your navigating challenging dialogues do that, but I think just sharing the story of how you got to this will also touch people. So thank you so much for sharing your story with me and our viewers. It's really a pleasure to learn more about you, Beth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to staying connected.
Thanks, me too.
Okay.